Hey everyone, welcome to the Way Wednesdays. It's such a pleasure to be with you. I've got Gary hanging out right back there. You saw him. And so that is exciting. We're going to get into the Torah. We're going to study this thing. We're going to look at the Torah portion for today. And it's really cool. If you can imagine a talking donkey, that's kind of exciting. A really greedy prophet, that's kind of interesting. And then the conniving ways that he got people to go against what God said to do so that they brought a curse upon themselves. Not a good idea. All right, so let's get into it. Hey, Gary, it's great to have you with me.
Great to be here. It sounds like a really exciting portion this week. It's almost just like last week was a really exciting week.
I
And probably
know.
next week.
I
It just
know.
never stops,
Yeah,
does it?
it really doesn't. It's hard. I mean, I've gone through the Bible, I don't know how many times, and I'm like, whoa, that was in there. And there's always something new. So that's really cool. Just a quick shout out. We got Donna Jaggers from Oklahoma. We got Deb Ellis. She is local. Hey, Deb, great to see you. Sally Hutchinson from up north. I forget exactly where, but up, that northern area.
I think Fort Collins.
Fort
Yes.
Collins, that's right. Thank you. Yes. And we have Shirley from Westminster, Shirley Summerzia. So it's great to see you guys. So glad that you're with us. And of course, we have your wonderful wife, the Way Safety team. So thank you, Jeannie, for watching out for us and just helping to help us to stay safe. So, hey, why don't we jump into the portion? There's a lot to get through, and if we don't move, we won't get through it. So that is my recommendation. If you're agreeable, Gary, but
I'm
if you'll
for it.
give us the commercial break here, if you would, my friend, and
Absolutely.
tell us
Join us
about
in
our wonderful trip.
Israel. Join us in Israel next year, April. We're departing on April 4th. We'll be there for 11 days, 12 days, 11 nights. Coming back on the 15th, actually be the 16th by the time we get back. It's in springtime. It's a beautiful time of year. Details are on the website, thewaycongregation.com/Israel trip. Um, and we're starting to take reservations now. So reservations are very simple. Just there'll be actually a brand new reservation site that will be linked to the website tomorrow
Hmm.
to even simplify more. And $300 deposit will and a portion of the package is only $2,500. This is unheard of for an 11-day trip.
So to clarify,
Um,
it's
and it,
2,500 for the land portion, okay?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
excluding the
so your
flight.
flight is on top of that. So last time we went, I think our price was around 3,500, something like that. Everything included.
3,500, something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So the
So
way we've had to do it because of COVID, because of all this, different stuff, we're getting a land price, which is 2,500 for 11 days, not 10, but 11 days. And that includes lodging. That includes 2 meals a day, two fat meals a day, by the way. I mean, they're amazing. You won't want to eat lunch because you'll be like, I'm too full. And and of course that includes the driver, which is worth it, right? I mean, wasn't it wonderful that we didn't have to not that we don't have to walk. Walking is good for us, but we got a lot of walking in. But the nice thing is that we could get dropped off without having to walk a mile just to get to the site we're trying to see. So you save a lot of time, is what I'm trying to say. And we still have to walk like 6.5 miles a day. So, and how many steps did we get? I mean, it was like 1,000
it
steps.
was a lot,
Yeah,
and like 20 stories. So
yeah,
Israel is a hilly country, so
yeah,
we're up and down, and so join
yeah.
us. It's a great weight loss program. Uh, no,
Yeah,
I tell
yeah,
you, walking the scriptures, there is
yeah,
nothing like it. It comes to life.
yeah.
You'll be changed, no doubt. You'll see Yeshua in a whole new light. The land comes alive before you. and it opens up the scriptures in a way that you've never seen before. We've got a couple of special things going on during the trip. We'll be telling you about those later on as we draw closer. And we've got a wonderful tour guide, and we're working on just a lot of really fun things and special things for this
Awesome.
journey.
Yeah, very cool. I'm looking at the comment section and I see we got some questions. We're going to take those in a minute. Just want to let you guys know, if you have questions about the Torah portion, go ahead and put them in there. Now, if it's too far afield and it's not kind of related to the Torah portion, we probably won't get to it. All right. I do a show, the Awakening Report, on Tuesdays. I took yesterday off because I was just too tired. But I'm working on great stuff. I want you to know that. So I just needed some extra time to do more writing. I was writing as fast as I could. So, but if you have questions about something that's kind of related to the Torah portion, then go ahead and put it in there, and we will do our best to get to it and to answer it. So, Ed Doss, I see your question. We will get to that, I promise. Well, let's jump into today's text. So we're in Numbers 22. And let's go ahead and start reading. So, then the children of Israel moved and camped in the plains of Moab on the side of the Jordan across from Jericho. Now Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many. And Moab was sick with dread because of the children of Israel. So Moab said to the elders of Midian, "Now this company will lick up everything around us, as an ox licks up the grass of the field." And Balak, the son of Zippor, was king of the Moabites at that time. Then he sent messengers to Balaam, or Balaam in Hebrew, the son of Beor at Petor, which is near the river in the land of the sons of his people, to call him, saying, "Look, a people has come from Egypt. See, they cover the face of the earth, and they are settling next to me. Therefore, please come at once, curse this people for me, for they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed." So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the diviner's fee in their hand, and they came to Balaam and spoke to him the words of Balak. And he said to them, "Lodge here tonight, and I will bring back word to you as the Lord speaks to me." The Lord, that is Yud-He Vav-He, by the way. So the princes of Moab stayed with Balaam. So then God came to Balaam and said, "Who are these men with you?" So Balaam said to God, "Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent them to me, saying, Look, a people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the earth. Come now, curse them for me. Perhaps I should be able to overpower them and drive them out." And God said to Balaam, "You shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed." So Balaam rose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, "Go back to your land, for the Lord has refused to give me permission to go with you." And the princes of Moab rose and went to Balak and said, "Balaam refuses to come with us." Then Balak sent princes more numerous and more honorable than they. And they came to Balaam and said to him, "Thus says Balak, the son of Zippor, please let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will certainly honor you greatly, and I will do whatever you say to me. Therefore, please come, curse his people for me." Then Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, "Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the word of the Lord my God to do less or more. Now, therefore, please, you also stay here tonight, that I may know what the Lord will say to me." And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, "If the men come to you to call you, rise and go with them. But only the word which I speak to you, that you shall do." So Balaam rose in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the princes of Moab. Why don't we stop there for a minute, Gary? Because I think there's a lot that we can dive into. The first thing that I'm noticing here is that Balaam is not an Israelite, and yet who is he serving? Right? He's serving Yud-He Vav-He. He is serving the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, God. Right? It's kind of like when we see that Jethro, the Midianite, he's also a servant of the Most High God. And then, of course, that very mysterious figure of Melchizedek, And we don't know exactly who he is, but he was also serving the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so it's very fascinating. It would seem that God has given himself a witness outside of the children of Israel, which I think is really cool.
So it begs the question: did God reveal Himself to the nations? Do they know Him? Did they know of Him outside of Israel? I mean, if you go back to Jethro, if you go back to Melchizedek back in Abraham's time, um, uh, even there's some discussion about Job, right? Obviously, he knew the Lord. So this is pre-children of Israel time, that somehow God was apparent to them. And there were prophets, it appears, that rose kind of out of the ranks of the nations that had this special relationship with God and were recognized as such.
Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting that Balaam is known for his ability as a prophet, right? So this is well known. Balak is willing to pay top dollar to secure this guy to come and do something, right? He's like, look, Balak's the best, or Balaam's the best. If he curses somebody, they're cursed. If he blesses somebody, they're blessed, right? So if you are a king and you want results, you're going to make sure that you get the best, and you're willing to pay for the best. You're willing to do whatever it takes to do that. So that is also fascinating, right? That there was such a reputation. They're not just trying to throw money away. And yet Balaam is, again, a prophet of the Lord. He's a prophet of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, of Adonai, or Yehovah. And yet somehow Balak thinks that he's for hire, which is interesting. Maybe he is for hire. I don't know. Maybe he normally did good stuff and now he's being tempted to do something bad. I mean, we don't have enough backstory to this guy to know what he was doing before. We can only kind of speculate just a little bit based on the text.
Well, and we can speculate that if Balak was going to hire Balaam, that he suspected that maybe he had been hired out before. Perhaps he had been used by others to kind of work his will in some type of arrangement or negotiation or warfare, which seems to be the case here. Obviously, the guy had a reputation. It's not like he shopped around and said, "Yeah, I'll try him first. I'll try him. If it doesn't work out, I'll go to Balaam." So it's really interesting to see how Balak understands he's not going to win this by might or by power. He's outnumbered, and he's going to use like a spiritual war.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very significant. Keith Davis in the chat made the good comment that Midian is a son of Aaron, and he's absolutely right. Right. So Abraham again took a wife, and her name was Keturah, and she bore him Zimran, Yokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Right. So from that we get this sense that Abraham had these other children, right? The Midian, then come the Midianites, right? So they were probably carrying on the tradition of what their father Abraham had taught them about the one true God. That's fascinating, isn't it? Right. So we often think, well, it's just the children of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and yet Abraham had these other children. He presumably would have taught them, right? That's how that.
Sure.
I mean, that's very logical, right? That he was teaching them about the one true God. So, God never is short-sighted. He always has a witness about himself. And people that want to find God can find God. That, I think, it's so important. It's so important. If somebody is looking for the truth, if they're looking for the real God of heaven, he will help them stumble into him one way or the other. But here we have just the opposite. Here, Balaam should have known the truth. He did know the truth. And yet, that, that filthy lucre, right, that started to get to him. And the thought of being honored, so first you send kind of the junior officials, then you send the next level, and then you got the big shots coming, right? So he's like, oh man, I'm really somebody important, right? These guys are going all out for me, right? And so it became a matter of pride. But we notice that, he never loses sight of the fact that he cannot curse somebody. It's God who does that. But he's going to do something so sneaky that it's going to really tick God off for a long time. And we're going to see that in the book of 2 Peter. We're going to see it in Revelation, big time, right? That's one of in fact, two churches Jesus talks about, Jezebel and Balaam, right? They kind of have these going together, and that it was because of Balaam that the people were cursed, not because he cursed them, but because he got them to curse themselves. So that's never a good thing when you go and you're cursed yourself. And really, Gary, that's the only way that if we are blessed, that's the only way we can be cursed, right?
We turn out to be our own worst enemy, where we fall to our fleshly side. We get lured into situations that compromise us, that subject us to things that that tempt us, and we're weak. We're weak individuals, and it's a lot easier for us to fall than we would like to admit. And so so God, put up a way for us to kind of protect us from being in situations that would compromise us. And if we walk according to His ways, we will find that we don't end up. When my kids were growing up, I always told them, I said, nothing good ever happens after 10 o'clock at night. If you're out there on the street and you're coming home from whatever, and I said, just know nothing good ever, or rarely, happens after 10 o'clock at night. It's just if you can avoid those situations, and we did that. I mean, we avoid dangerous situations. We avoid neighborhoods. We avoid whatever to protect ourselves. God has given us instructions so that we can avoid the pitfalls that Balaam and Balak has set for us. And again, we see this echoed a number of times throughout Scripture. And I really think it's still prevalent today. The same thing hasn't changed.
And notice in the text here, I mean, Balaam starts off really strong. He's like, there's no way that I could possibly do this, right? So, they come along and, please curse this people. And he says, let's see, in this verse, I think. So they come with their diviner's fee. Lodge here tonight, I'll bring you back word to you as the Lord speaks to me, right? So go back and tell him. And God said to Balaam, you shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. So Balaam rose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, go back to your land, for the Lord has refused to give me permission to go with you. So it's kind of like your example, Gary, of staying out after 10. It's kind of like when the kids or whoever keeps pressing for that, please, 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 right? God has already said no. And so Balak's like, oh, but pretty please, right? Because they want to honor me. They're working on his pride and probably his greed. And so then God's like, okay, go with them, right? So God is not going to allow the situation to go unchecked. In fact, he's going to use it for good instead of for evil.
Right.
But we're all free agents. That's super important. We are free agents. God allows us to sin. I remember praying, "Oh Lord, don't let me do this, Lord. Don't let me do that wrong thing." And now I realize the folly of that kind of prayer, because God's like, you can do what you want. If you want to pursue righteousness, I will be with you. But if you want to pursue evil, I don't recommend it. But you have the freedom to do that. So,
All boils down to our choices.
yeah, right. Ed asked the question very apropos for this moment. Diviner's fee, was he a diviner or a prophet, or riding the fence? That's a good question, Ed. I'm not sure I know the answer. Do you have a sense of what that would be, Gary? I mean,
Uh,
was he more a, can you see a
the
distinction?
there's I think in rabbinic writings
Hmm.
they ascribe some magical qualities or some sort of otherworldly qualities
Hmm.
to Balaam.
Yeah.
So that may be where that, and it may be a nuance of the Hebrew language. I don't. That would be.
Well, yeah. The word here in the Hebrew is ksamim, which is witchcraft,
Mhm.
right? So that is relating to witchcraft. So it's not so much the diviner's fee as kind of like more like the witch's fee, if you will. Um, so yeah, here's our word ksamim. Um, yeah, divination, witchcraft. So they came to pay him as if he were uh, a diviner, or a witch of some sort. Now, whether he identified as that, I don't specifically see that in the text. That he is working for Yehovah gives me something to say, well, I don't know. But again, it's kind of a big question mark in my mind. So okay, let's get to the good part here. He now gets on his donkey, right? And can you make everybody can see my screen. Okay. Then God's anger was aroused, because he went, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary, as a Satan, by the way, against him. And he was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. Now the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand, and the donkey turned aside out of the way and went into the field. So Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back onto the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards, with a wall on this side and a wall on that side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed herself against the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. Then the angel of the Lord went further and stood in a narrow place, where there was no way to turn either to the right hand or to the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam's anger was aroused, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you've struck me these 3 times?" And Balaam said to the donkey, "Because you have abused me, I wish there were a sword in my hand, for now I would kill you." And so the donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your donkey in which you have ridden ever since I became yours to this day? Was I ever disposed to do this to you?" And he said, "No." Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand. And he bowed his head and fell flat on his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to stand against you, because your way is perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely I would also have killed you by now and let her live." And Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, "I have sinned, for I did not know you stood in the way against me. Now therefore, if it displeases you, I will turn back." Then the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, "Go with the men, but only the word that I speak to you, that you shall speak." So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. Now when Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to meet him at the city of Moab, which is on the border at the Arnon, the boundary of the territory. All right, let's stop there for now, because there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about with this donkey. So the question that Ed had actually asked before was, did angels speak? Let's see, did angels or animals? Excuse me, angels. Did animals speak before the fall? Well, um, I mean, ultimately, we don't know. My hunch is not so much that they spoke English like we do. They didn't. I suspect they probably, and again, I'm just speculating. I suspect they probably didn't have the faculty of speech like we humans do, because we have a whole different physiology that allows us to speak. So my guess is that they probably didn't. However, as someone who loves animals, I grew up with animals. We had chickens and goats, and we had pigs back then. We had horses and a dog and a cat, right? And I got to be friends with the animals. I talked with them. Now we have a bunny, and I still go talk to the bunny. And I never hear her speak audibly, but she's got a personality. And every animal that I've ever gotten to know has a personality. And you can sense, again, you not 100%, right? But we can sense that the animal is communicating something. And that can be very clear with dogs, right? They can bark about danger. They can bark about there's somebody at the door. They can bark about, I'm hungry, whatever it may be. And if anybody ever saw the animated cartoon Pets, quite cute, where they have the secret life of pets, right? The secret life of pets. And when their owners go away, then they have these parties and everything. It's really funny, right? But it's kind of it takes the stereotypes of what animals do, and you're like, oh, that's what they're really doing, right? It's a really funny movie. Anyway, cats have a certain way of communicating, often to let you know that they really don't care that you're around. But if you don't do what they want, they will keep talking to you. So my hunch is that animals have always been able to communicate. I think that we lost the ability to understand them. Again, I don't think that they actually talked with the human faculty of speech like we talk, but I would suspect that they had a form of communication and that we have lost the ability to understand them, right? So we're no longer dog whisperers and lion whisperers, right? We can't really sense that. And when somebody seems to have a knack to really communicate with animals, we call them a dog whisperer or whatever that may be. And I think that there's still something that if we're patient and we take time and we get to know the animal and we're really listening to cues, we kind of just get a sense of what they're saying. Having horses, I could tell their different whinnies, right? There was the whinny of like we had two horses, a boy and a girl, and when one would go away, you could hear the other one crying for the other horse, right? And I understood that whinny perfect. I'm like, he's sad that his girlfriend has gone away, right? And he wants her to come back. I understood that. And then when they'd come back, they'd have a little, kind of horsey thing. And I'm not so good at doing horse, right? But there would be this little whinny or whatever horse language, right? That said, "I'm so glad you're back," right? Or sometimes when they right, do that, and you're like, "Stop being lazy. Come on, we just got started on our trail. I think we've gone half a mile, and you're already whining about going on this, right?" And I just know the horse is just like, "Do I really have to?" And it's like, "Yeah, come on, that's what you do. You're a horse, you know." And so there are all these different signals of what they're really saying. And Gary, you probably experience this. It kind of like our kids when they're really little, you can tell their different cries, right? There's the cry, somebody took my crayons. Then there's the cry, that's not fair, and I'm not getting what I want. And then there's a cry of, oh, I'm really, really hurt, right? And you could always hear like, yeah, they're crying, but it's nothing. And then you're like, whoa, wait a second, that's a very different cry, right? So baby humans, I think, are probably the closest at that point to kind of the animal's cognition that it's just different frequencies of these cries. But if you're tuning in, you can tell what they're saying. So, I mean, and even with monkeys and stuff, right? They can do various sign language and stuff. And so I think, yeah, I think animals can communicate. And I think that we lost the ability to understand what they're saying. That's my hunch. What are your thoughts?
We actually had 3 donkeys, and we
Okay.
had them for a number of years, and very intelligent animals. They really, and they communicate very well. They know exactly what they want to do. They know what's safe. They know when they want to be lazy, when they want to be active, and they communicate that to you very clearly. Not as clearly as this donkey in the story here in Numbers 22. Um, but like you were saying, Doug, you could definitely tell what they were saying. The only thing I wanted to point out, the only other reference I could find in the scripture is from Genesis 3, related to the serpent.
Mm,
Um, so,
mhm,
uh, but as a rule, this was really a unique and interesting case, and the conversation that goes on between Balaam and the donkey is a very intellectual conversation. This is not
mhm.
like a, well, I don't know
Yeah.
why I'm slowing down here.
He's not Eeyore, right? The
Yeah,
donkey can count, right? He remembers the past, right? Hey, have I ever
yeah,
done this since I was with you, right? And these three
yeah,
times you struck me, right? So the donkey can count. He's keeping track, and he feels a sense of injustice, right?
yeah,
Like,
definitely.
why are you doing that? You
I'm
know,
looking out for you, buddy, and you're sitting here beating me. It's
that's
like
right,
you need to trust me. He says,
right. Mhm,
have I ever done you wrong? And I think there's a really great lesson there in regards to trust.
mhm,
Uh, when people act in faith and they are consistently looking out for you, don't give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to continue to do that. We
mhm,
see this in
mhm,
leadership all the time,
mhm,
where people say, "Oh, well, you're not responding to this, you're not responding to that, or you're going down this trail or that trail." A little bit of trust goes a long way, and
mhm,
we like to
mhm,
think that as leaders, not just Doug and I, but all pastors and leaders have to earn your trust for one. But once we
mhm,
earn your trust, it's nice to be able to extend that,
mhm,
at least to the degree where if you get upset with something that's said, you don't just walk out the door and never come back and say, well, maybe we should talk about that because,
mhm,
I trusted you at one time.
mhm,
Um, and I say,
mhm.
okay, well, let's talk about it because I don't think anybody really wants to harm a trust relationship. Certainly, the donkey didn't.
That's
Um,
right. Mhm.
and Balaam didn't quite get that. So there was a
And
number
what
of things he didn't get.
Yeah, again, and what's ironic about this is that Balaam's supposed to be the seer, right? He's the guy that is in touch with the divinity, right, with the divine, and yet it's the donkey that can see the angel, right? And this is where I really do believe that animals, especially dogs in particular, but also horses, they have a heightened awareness. I don't know that they have a sixth sense, but they have a heightened awareness of different things. And of course, this raises all kinds of interesting questions. What does it mean to be a spiritual being? I don't know, right? That's a very interesting one. But we do know that dogs can hear higher pitches than we can. Obviously, they can smell way better than we can smell, right? So there can be things in the environment that they're
Right.
picking up on, and we're completely blind to those things. Now, from Balaam's donkey, we get the impression that the animal can see into, well, obviously could see into that other realm
Yeah.
when the guy who was supposed to be the prophet could not see into that other realm. I believe that he was blinded by greed. That is my take on that. That money, the dollar signs, right? The gold coins clinging in his bag were blinding him to the spiritual reality of what was happening. But um I mean, to some degree, some of the stories that I think we've probably all heard are anecdotal. We don't know. We don't have always solid proof, but animals are able to sense an earthquake is coming. Sometimes they can sense. Um, some people have suggested they can sense some kind of a demonic presence. Again, it's anecdotal, so it's hard to really to qualify these things. but I'm prone to believe some of those things.
Yeah, and certainly there's animals that can root out people with diseases or diabetics as they need insulin and things like that.
Mhm.
So their senses are heightened in ways that humans aren't, or however they do that. They haven't
Yeah.
told
Well, and there's even this weird thing. There seems to be kind of a quantum connection, right? A quantum entanglement that animals can sense when their owners are coming home, and they're
Yep.
far away, right? They're far away. There's no conceivable way with their senses that they should be able to know that their owners are coming, and yet the owners are coming home. And they even have a sense of time that, okay, it's about that time, the owner should be coming home now, right? And so I think there's a lot more going on with animals than we give them credit for, right? I
Yep.
mean, clearly we're the smartest. We use about 40% of our prefrontal cortex. Dogs use about 7%. Cats use 6%. Sorry, cat lovers, but those are the facts. um, I think dolphins are in the range of 12 to 14 percent of their prefrontal cortex. And of course our prefrontal cortex is really that sense of consciousness, right? That's our ability to process information in that conscious sense. But of course there's a whole bunch that is happening below the surface in the subconscious that, well, we don't know about it because it's subconscious, and there may be stuff that's happening in an animal's brain that we're just not aware of, right? God has not told us every secret of the universe. And I don't know. It really is amazing when you start to look at animal communication. I mean, elephants can really communicate, right? They know how to communicate. And I think we're just now beginning to understand this. Jane Goodall, right? She spent all those years with the gorillas, right? There's a very real communication that is happening, but because we don't understand it, we have assumed that they're just completely dumb creatures. Now, they're not as smart as we are, but they're not dumb either. And elephants actually grieve when one of their own dies. I think that's amazing. That an animal should grieve when it's lost somebody. And I've sensed that just with the animals that I've had, that suddenly their companion is gone.
Right.
So, I totally think that they can communicate. The problem might be with us. Maybe we're not listening closely enough. And I will say this: that when we get into the age to come, I believe that communication between humans and animals, whatever it looks like or sounds like, I think it's going to be restored, so that we will be able to really understand them perfectly. I doubt they're going to be speaking our form of language. I think they'll kind of do a Chewbacca. They'll they'll do their Chewbacca grunts, but Han Solo could understand it perfectly, right? So, and he never responded in kind. He just spoke English, and Chewbacca understood, right? So that's kind of how I see that all coming to play.
Yeah, you
Now,
just gotta know other languages.
well, yeah, exactly. You do, and they'll be able to. I mean, who knows what they hear when we are actually talking? Who knows, right? Cats don't hear anything. Right? What did you talk? I love
They hear what
cats.
they want
Yeah, that's
to
right. Oh, you think I'm the greatest? Okay. um,
hear.
but it's interesting. We got to go back to the text because there's something pretty cool in here, and that is as Balak is going out. So here he is. He's going out, and it says that the Malach Adonai. Okay, so we got Malach Adonai baderech le Satan lo. Okay, le Satan. So here's the word Satan. What was the angel of the Lord doing? He was Sataning him. Okay, right there it is. An adversary, one who withstands. Adversary in general, personal, national, superhuman adversary, or Satan. Now, the important thing to understand about the word Satan or Satan is that Satan is not his name. Satan is not his name. Satan is simply a title. It's a title, the adversary, the one who stands in the way. And the opponent. And certainly that is what God is doing, or the angel of the Lord in this case, which I think is God, but nonetheless, he's there to stand against him as an adversary. Kind of interesting. So the person that we call Satan, this entity, this fallen angel that we know as Satan, it's not his name. By the way, Lucifer is not his name either. That, I believe, is a mistranslation based on Isaiah 14:12, the word Halel. That word really is Enlil. And I've done a whole bunch of studies on that. I'm writing a book on that subject. So I hope people can afford themselves of those resources that are on my YouTube channel right now. But nevertheless, God was there to withstand him. And I think this is an important lesson, that sometimes we're so eager to forge ahead, we don't see that sometimes, just sometimes, the obstacles in our way might be a blessing in disguise. And I think we're so stressed when we don't get to that place on time. I mean, we should always try to be on time, but sometimes you try your best and there's nothing you can do, and everything stood against you, right? Everything was withstanding you. And what we don't realize is that, this might be a blessing in disguise. I don't know, right? There's no way to know until I can rewind the tape someday and go back and say, oh, that was you standing in the way, Lord, because you were keeping me from getting to that intersection at that time when I would have gotten struck by a bus, right?
Mhm.
And so you were helping me out there. I just had no idea. This is why we're to give thanks in all things, because it could be that the angel of the Lord, or one of God's angels, if you will, is actually slowing us down, because you don't realize that the bridge is out up front. And if you go zooming ahead, you're going to die, or whatever the situation may be. It could be that it's those kinds of scenarios that are actually keeping us alive. And if it weren't for the angel, he'd be dead, right? I keep saying angel, the donkey, excuse me. If it weren't for the donkey, he would be dead. That donkey saved his life, and he had nothing but kicks for it. So, poor thing.
Yeah, and I think it's a classic example of, we feel we're on a mission and nothing's going to stand in our way. In this case, Balaam's a classic consultant for hire. He wants to go in and do his job and get out, and that's what he's on a mission to do. And he's ready to go and get it done and get back home, kick the feet up. And
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
shall we move on?
Yeah. I just had one more thing, though, which is,
go.
God said to go, but then it says God was angry that he went. Right.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think there's something something that's not in the text that we kind of have to fill in the blank just a little bit, because we get it later, right? That he said, he says, "Do you want me to turn around?" He says, "No, go, but only say what I'm telling you to say." And so I think what is not specifically in the text is that, first God said, "Don't go," and then Balaam asked again, "Can I go?" Okay, go, but only tell him what I say, right? And it would seem that there was a heart issue. It would seem that Balaam was already, in his mind, he's kind of playing the tape, right? He's imagining all of the glory and the fame and the money he's going to get from this thing. And that's kind of all he's thinking about when the angel of the Lord is standing in the way, trying to get his attention. The donkey's getting it, but he presumably is, off in La La Land thinking about all the glories that await him. And it was, God's like, I'm letting you go, but you better understand this, because I can see into your heart that you already have evil intentions. Now, why would I say that? It's not specifically in the text. It's later in the text. We're going to know from God's ire against Balaam in the book of Revelation, but also in Numbers 29 to 30, when the young ladies are going to come out and they're going to seduce the young Israeli men, so that they will go and worship these false gods, right? So he finds a back door because he really wants the glory and the money. And just really quick here, Keith Davis has comment, just his perspective. He says the entire idea of the fee was all on Balak, in my opinion. So Keith, you may be right. You may be right that this whole idea was Balak's, but Balaam still wants to go, right? He's eager to go, and in the end, he's going to find a way for the Israelites to curse themselves. So I think that the money did get his attention. It's not obvious up front, but when we get to the end of the story and we see that God was so wrathful against him, and he finally is killed in battle, and he got what he deserved because of the greed, and it talks about the greed of Balaam. And throughout the New Testament, it talks about the greed of Balaam. So the conclusion at the end of the day is the guy was greedy, right? He doesn't look that way initially, but in the end, he is greedy. All right, let's go on from there. There's lots more text to jump into. All right, so we were in. Okay, so then 37. Then Balak said to Balaam, did I not earnestly send to you, calling for you? Why did you not come to me? Am I not able to honor you? And Balaam said to Balak, look, I have come to you. Now, have I any power at all to say anything? The word that God puts in my mouth, that I must speak. So Balaam went with Balak, and they came to Kiryat Huzot. And Balak offered oxen and sheep, and he sent some to Balaam and to the princes who were with him. So it was the next day that Balak took Balaam and brought him up to the high places of Baal, that's important, that from there he might observe the extent of the people. All right, then Balaam said to Balak, build 7 altars for me here, and prepare for me here 7 bulls and 7 rams. And Balak did just as Balaam had spoken, and Balak and Balaam offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Then Balaam said to Balak, stand by your burnt offering, and I will go. Perhaps the Lord will come to meet me, and whatever he shows me, I will tell you. So he went to a desolate height, and God met Balaam, and he said to him, I have prepared the 7 altars, and I have offered on each altar a bull and a ram. Then the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, return to Balak, and thus he shall speak. So he returned to him, and there he was standing by his burnt offering, he and all the princes of Moab. And he took up his oracle and said, Balak, the king of Moab, has brought me from Aram, from the mountains of the east. Come, curse Jacob for me, and come, denounce Israel. How shall I curse whom God has not cursed? And how shall I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? From the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. There, a people dwelling alone, not reckoning itself among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, or number 1/4 of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my end be like his. And then Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? I took you to curse my enemies, and look, you have blessed them bountifully. And so he answered and said, must I not take heed to speak what the Lord has put in my mouth? All right, let's stop there. Man, I'll tell you, I love this, Gary, because it is such an encouragement that what God has blessed, no man can curse. Isn't that amazing? And I think this is something that we forget all the time, that God said, I've blessed you. But we find ourselves, we're the ones who then start walking in a curse. And then when we find ourselves cursed and hating the fruit thereof, we're like, oh my goodness, God, I can't believe. And he's like, I told you you were blessed, but you did this thing. You started to walk in ways that were not pleasing to me. It's not that I poured curses on you, is that you walked right into the curses, right? And then they started snapping at you and biting, and now you're wondering why you're all bitten and bruised and hurt, because you walked right into it. I told you not to, and I told you you were blessed. And
so true. I mean,
yeah.
all we have to do is look at the Torah, the last pages of the book of Deuteronomy, and the curses, the blessings and curses are spelled out pretty clearly for us. And God is faithful to His word. That's the bottom line. That if you do these things, I will bless you. If you choose not to do these things, you will be cursed. You will be things won't go so well. And yet we see that God has compassion on us. He forgives us. He gives us second, third, 10th chances over and over again. But it would be so much simpler for us if we would simply walk according to the way that God gave us instructions to do, and embrace the blessings that He has laid before us, because He really does. His intent is not to punish us. His intent is not to, let us have a miserable life. He really desires for us good, happiness, peacefulness. Now, of course, life is not always like that, but ultimately, if we follow after God's will and follow His instructions, the blessings will come. We simply have to walk in them, but we don't. We step aside. We, something catches our attention, squirrel, and we go off on one tangent or another,
Right.
and we stray.
Right.
And once we get outside of that, that framework that He's put before us, we have trouble waiting for us then.
No kidding. Sadly, huh? So sad. But I mean, some of the insights here of what Balaam is saying, I mean, they're so cool. I mean, look what he's saying about Israel. First of all, yeah, how can I curse whom God has not cursed? And how shall I denounce what the Lord has not denounced? So there's no way to do it. In fact, Satan understood this in the book of Job, right? How can I curse Job when you've blessed him? And so God's like, okay, you can go for it. Just don't kill him, right? And then he says, look, a people dwelling alone, not reckoning itself among the nations. That is really cool, right? Because this is exactly what God had told Israel at Mount Sinai, that if you will be my people and walk according to my ways, you will be a set apart people. You'll be a holy nation. That was the idea. That's the idea of this holy matrimony. What makes a marriage holy? Not that it's perfect, not that nobody ever burns the toast, and not that that nobody ever forgets to change the toilet paper thing, right? Or that you never find socks on the floor, right? Those are not the things that make a perfect marriage, or should I say a holy marriage. What makes a marriage holy is just one thing alone, and that it's only the two of you. That's what makes it, and it's a man and a woman. I guess I should throw that in nowadays, right? But man and a woman, and there's only the two of you. Okay, so just to clarify on that one. And so that's what makes it a holy marriage. And the moment you go sneaking off and are hanging out with somebody else in ways you shouldn't, it's now not a holy matrimony. And so that's what God wanted, is that Israel would be holy with an H, holy, given over to the Lord in this holy, Holy, this holy relationship, and that they would not go whoring after other gods, right? They would not go after other gods. And God's like, and I'm going to bless you beyond what you can imagine. You just got to stick with me. And the way that Balaam gets them is they go after other gods. That's the sad part about this, is that he gets them to curse themselves. It's a sad testimony, but it works like a charm, because Balaam, I can't curse them, but God will.
And He does it in a really insidious way. I mean, through immorality, through sexuality, through kind of your base desires, that we so easily lay down our defenses. It's like, it's like you're walking down the street and your eyes, just go wandering. It is. You need the strength of the Lord to really walk this righteous path, and to remain faithful is such a blessed thing. And to slip away from that is it just has devastating results. And we see it here, not just in a physical sense where we see 24,000, that die by the plague, but in the spiritual slide that happens in the spiritual results that echo again through the rest of the pages of the Bible, clear to the book of Revelation, and still permeate our culture today. In even stronger ways, we see this.
I wanted to share some things here from the text, just kind of doing a quick search on Balaam, because we're going to run out of time, and I wanted to kind of skip to the end here. They killed the kings of Midian with the rest of those who were killed, Evi, Rekem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, and the 5 kings of Midian. Balaam, the son of Beor, they also killed with the sword. Why would they do that? Okay, I mean, goodness. Why would they kill this guy? Well, later on, they say, look, these women caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to trespass against the Lord in the incident of Peor, and there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. Right? So Balaam now has this name that goes down in infamy. All right, and then he's of course mentioned here in Deuteronomy 23 that he hired Balaam against you. Nevertheless, the Lord would not listen to Balaam, but the Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you because the Lord your God loves you. Right? So God was all intent on taking this evil machination of Balak and ultimately Balaam and turning it into something good. And if Balaam had just gotten his baseball and gone home, it would have been good after this, right? But he doesn't, because the money keeps him preoccupied and chasing that almighty dollar or shekel as it were back in those days. I'm going to skip here to 2 Peter. It says, they have forsaken the right way and gone astray, following the way of Balaam the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, but he was rebuked for his iniquity. A dumb donkey speaking with a man's voice restrained the madness of the prophet. All right, so it's clearly about greed. It's clearly about greed. That's what he's in this for. It's not just the honor, though he would do that, but it's about greed. In the book of Jude, woe to them, for they have gone in the way of Cain and have run greedily in the error of Balaam for profit and have perished in the rebellion of Korah. And then lastly, we have in Revelation chapter 2, I'd have a few things against you because you have those who hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel to eat things sacrificed to idols and to commit sexual immorality. All right, so he definitely goes down in infamy as being a greedy conniver who is out for profit, and he found a way, though he could not curse them because they were blessed, because God had blessed them and God put this shield around them and there's no way to get through it. So then what he does is he gets these young Moabite women, they're really pretty. They come over and they basically say, hey boys, you want to see how we go and worship our gods, right? Wink, wink, come follow me. And like a lamb being led to the slaughter, the young Israelite men are like, yeah, show me, baby. And so they go, and by doing these rituals, which involve sexual acts and all kinds of, and Baal of Peor was nasty. Peor basically are your orifices. Okay, so this is one. These are others, right? You know where the other ones are in your body. All the openings on your bodies, and it was this really nasty god that had to do with excrement and just disgusting kind of stuff. I don't know why they'd get into that, but of course it involves sexual acts as well.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Doug. You referenced that passage out of Revelation chapter 2, where it talks about eating things sacrificed to idols and committing sexual immorality. Do you see a linkage here to Acts 15 and the Council of Jerusalem and the instructions given to the churches of the nations? where in
You're
Acts
brushing
15.
up against something there, buddy. I'm not sure what. But yeah, in Acts chapter 15, your microphone is kind of rubbing against something. So yeah, in Acts 15, we got here in verse 20. But that we write to them to abstain from things polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from things strangled, and from blood. Yeah, I mean, I think these are kind of the basic things that God is really against. Obviously, those are straight from the Torah. Those are from the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, chapter 18, 19, somewhat in 20. Right? Stay away from those things, especially chapter 18. Because God says the life is in the blood, so don't eat that. People would eat it thinking you'd somehow derive the energy, the life force of the creature that you're eating. And then, of course, blood was often involved with these sacrifices, not just the slaughtering of an animal to eat it, but the slaughtering of an animal for a religious function. Okay. And then sexual perversion. And this all goes back to Ishtar or Inanna, the queen of heaven, right? So, yeah, she morphs a little bit, but it's the same one all the way through. And Baal is none other than, so Baal is Bel, is Marduk, who is Enlil, who is Satan. So they're all the same dude, right? Or should I say henchmen that work for Satan, okay? But basically, it's all the same cult, if you will. And
Right.
go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's these really basic functions that that cause us to trip up, to be tempted, to fall away into idolatry. If it's food sacrificed to idols, well, who doesn't want food? Oh, it's sacrificed to this idol. That's okay. I can go ahead and eat that, and it's again very slippery slope. It's like, oh, it's this one night stand,
Right.
we can get by that, and it's like, no, you can't. It's really, I see this also in 1 Corinthians 10, where it talks about the same things, and it relates all of these fleshly desires, food, sexual relations, to idolatry. They all lead you away from God. Once you get outside of the holy things that He has set before us.
Yep. Well, and Satan is clever, of course, right? So where did he encounter Adam and Eve? In the Garden of Eden, right? What does Eden mean? Eden means pleasure. So God put Adam and Eve in the garden of pleasure. The garden of pleasure, right? I mean, that's the place to be, right? Well, of course, they get the boot. So then Satan's trying to convince the world to follow him, but what does he have to offer, right? At God's right hand are pleasures forevermore. So what can he possibly offer? Well, he can offer a counterfeit version.
Right.
And let's be clear, right? Food sacrificed to idols is probably quite yummy. Those promiscuous sexual encounters are quite pleasurable. But here's the thing, is how long do they last? Like 0.01, whatever minute, second. I mean, they're fleeting, right? They go so quickly, and all you have is you're left chasing for the next opportunity. And so then you become a slave to that. You become a slave because you want the pleasure, but the pleasure doesn't last. It's real pleasure. Let's be completely frank about that. Real pleasures, right? Those counterfeit pleasures feel great, but they don't last. And so then you have to get the next one. And in order to have that, even to kind of break even, you have to go above and beyond in your experience to get something even more. And it's called chasing the dragon, because you're never satisfied. Whereas at God's right hand are pleasures forever.
Right.
They're never ending. That's the difference. And if we would follow the Lord, he's like, I have pleasures galore just waiting for you. But you have to learn to die to yourself. You can't just jump in to these temptations and go with them, because you'll enjoy it for the moment, but it will be over so quick. and then you'll be destitute. You'll become a slave to that, because then you'll have to get more, and you have to go back to that same god or goddess. And don't think that we don't worship these things today. We do. We just generally
Oh,
don't genuflect
absolutely.
to a little idol, right? But it's a god of a different nature. It's the same God, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, yeah, it really is. It's no different.
Yeah.
We don't think it is, because it's not written in the pages of Scripture, but it really is identical.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And so that's how Satan gets us, right? Now, how did he get Balaam? What was his weakness? Greed and honor, right? So, let's just, again, we need to be really frank about this. Some people have a weakness for drugs. Some people have a weakness for fame. Some people have a weakness for sex. Some people have a weakness for, attaboys. I don't know, whatever, right? Whatever that thing is, could be different than your neighbor, because we're all wired a little bit differently. We all have the same basic things, but praise the Lord, alcohol has never been an issue for me. Okay, I'm not tempted by the bottle. And I just thank God for that. Okay, I'm not boasting. I'm just thankful. I have my own weaknesses, right? And Satan knows that if he presses those buttons and I start to listen, I start to pay attention, then he could get me. And so what I have to do is be diligent to say, okay, I'm aware that I'm a little weak in this area, so I need to be careful to not
Mhm.
feed that flesh. I cannot feed that. If I do, I'm going to find myself enslaved. And so every one of us needs to just have a sense, okay, where I'm a little bit weak, it may not be, chasing the bottle. It may not be chasing the dollar, but it's chasing sex, or it's chasing fame, or whatever it may be, that drug that you're at.
Whatever is going to take you away from really what God has told us that we should do. And
Hmm.
the trouble is that we think we are following God when really we're following our desires. We say, "Oh, God really wants me to go and do this." Whether it's chasing knowledge,
Hmm.
or whether it's
Hmm.
being the best at whatever, uh, to the for the sake of everything else in your life. And life gets out of balance, and maybe we neglect our wife or our children, because we're pursuing this noble goal, because really I know that God wants me to be the best at this. So
Hmm.
um, it really does get to be a bit of a challenge for a lot of people. It doesn't have to be some like really obvious perversity or
Hmm.
uh, criminal act or something like that. It
Yep.
can be anything that really gets your life out of balance with what God has placed before you.
Yep.
When things just disintegrate or fall by the wayside.
Well said, Gary. And I think a weakness for the Christian community at large, and the Torah community specifically, is Gnosticism, right? That we go after knowledge, and we make the knowledge about God a substitute for a relationship with God.
Mhm.
And I don't know exactly where that line is. I don't know when I'm pursuing knowledge over and against a relationship, but I do know, after if I continue to just seek knowledge about God, I'm like, wait a second, something's not right here, right? I've lost something. And that's the rebuke that Jesus gave to the church of Ephesus, is that, yeah, they were standing against false doctrine and false teachers, but they left their first love, which was a relationship with him.
And I think oftentimes it gets reflected in the way you interact in the community of believers.
Hmm.
Are you just there to hear the message but not really interact with anybody? Are you
Hmm.
really there just to press your agenda on the things
Hmm.
that you know, the things that you found out, or the flavor of the month that came up in YouTube this week or last week or whatever?
Uh-huh.
Are you really just there to talk about what you know, or are you really there to talk about, hey, to check in on your neighbor or the person sitting next to you in the seat? to sense, are they hurting? Do they have any needs? Are they happy? Can you share any gladness? Is there a
Mhm.
Thanksgiving? One of the things, it's a good things that we need to do is to get people up there to tell their testimonies. We haven't done that in a while. Of course, we've only been open for a couple weeks since the whole quarantine at home thing.
Mhm.
But I mean, there's got to be some great testimonies out there of how God has sustained us through the quarantine period. That to share the real stories of
Mm.
people. I think
Yep.
that's how we begin to tell this or determine this line between, am I just studying for studying's sake
Mm.
and calling it being righteous with God,
Mm.
but I'm neglecting the body. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
there really is, and again, I don't think it can be. It's not just the Shabbat social club either.
Right.
There really has to be an earnest desire to learn the word, to
Mhm.
practice the word, and then that gets reflected then in your actions
Yeah.
within the community. There really is this at least twofold type of thing: understanding and relationship.
Well said. Just like Ezra has a question, didn't Paul say it's okay to eat food sacrificed to idols? Great question. And the answer is yes and no. Okay. So, um, yes, you can eat something that was offered to an idol, but here's the qualifier: only if you're not told that it was offered to an idol. Okay. So his whole point is, what are these gods? They're nothing. These idols, they're nothing. Right. So if you don't know, so if somebody puts some food in front of you and they say, hey, this was offered to an idol, don't eat it. Do not eat it, is what he says. But if they set it in front of you and they don't say anything, then don't ask. Say, you're not supposed to say, hey, was this sacrificed to an idol? Right? Because if you don't know that it was sacrificed to an idol and the person giving it to you has not made that claim, has not told you, then you are not giving honor to the idol, because that's what it's all about. So I think that's in 1 Corinthians 8 and 10. I think those are some tricky passages that really require some focus. You guys can check out a teaching I have that on my YouTube channel. It's food sacrifice to idols, and I don't think Paul was disagreeing with what Scripture is saying at all. I think Paul was explaining that if you know it was offered to an idol, and say, "Hey, have this whatever this was offered to an idol, do not eat it." In fact, there's a lot of idolatry that's still practiced in India, and I was looking at this photo of these various food items that were offered to an idol, and one of them was a chiquita banana. And I'm like, wait, it's just a banana, right? So if you just gave me a chiquita banana, I'd eat it, right? But if you took me into that temple and you're like, hey, this was sacrificed to an idol, you want to eat the banana? I'd be like, no, no, I cannot eat that banana because now I know where it's been. I
Mhm.
know that it has now been offered to an idol. And simply for, if nothing else, for the sake of those around and certainly the person that offered it, I can't eat it because that would be a complicit um, uh, agreement or endorsement
Of
of
that,
this
right?
idol, right? And
Yeah.
I in no way want to endorse idols. So that's what Paul is getting at. So again, if you don't know, go ahead and eat it. But if you do know, do not eat it. So I don't think he disagrees at all with what Jesus and Moses are saying.
Yep.
Yep. So, well, guys, we are out of time. This was fantastic. Thank you, Pastor Gary. Question here from Ruth. ¿Puede ser algunos programas en castellano? Thank you, Ruth. I would love to do more. I just run out of time to do stuff in Spanish. I understand, and I just wish I had the time. I don't, sadly. So sorry, but glad that you're tuning in, and we just want to give a shout out to everybody. Again, if you're in the area, come join us. Shabbat in Lakewood. We're starting at 10:30. We're having some wonderful time of music. Vince is going to be leading us this week, so I'm looking forward to that. And then around 11:15 or so, we start the study. And one of these days, we'll get back to having our oneg, to having our potluck. I miss having those, but we want to be, we want to be smart and wise and good stewards of all that God has given us. And so we're just not having a time of eating food together right now, just to try to be smart, And anyway, that's it. Thank you guys. God bless you. Until next time. Take
Great
care.
to see everybody. God bless.